good news is it's happening every day. We're witnessing a myriad of smarter approaches in industry, cities, communities around the world. It's exciting, it's encouraging. It holds the promise, I think, to deliver on the sense of hope we all had 10 years ago as we entered this new millennium.
Ladies and gentlemen, see.
Thank you. Good morning. It's great to be back here at Lotusphere. It feels somewhat familiar up here. Everyone have a great time last night? You know, there's something about Lotusphere and, you know, the first day and then the first evening. The rumor I heard this morning, because unexpected things do happen at Lotusphere, I did hear that a former general manager of Lotus and the current VP of development were doing duets at the karaoke bar last night. So it is a little bit interesting what happens here with the mixture of collaboration that's going on. You might have been going a little bit too far with that one. So, as you know, I'm no stranger to this event, and it feels great to be back up here with all of you walking around the event. Yesterday, you heard from Alistair Rennie about how the market is shifting to a new era that we're calling social business. You heard from a wide selection of clients about the obstacles and the opportunities associated with this new social business trend. Most importantly, and hopefully, you've heard from each other, the fellow leaders of industry and business, about the steps that many of you are taking in your respective industries to build smarter, more social businesses. So why are so many of us making this shift? Put simply, if we don't, it's a major missed opportunity. Look at the type of challenges that our businesses are facing today. Regardless of the industry, the challenges are at the intersection of business and technology. For example, information overload. 15 petabytes of new information being generated every day. I'm not quite sure how to envision that big a number. Sheer complexity. It's among the IT infrastructures and also within our businesses. It's where we face issues of governance and corporate policy and how we deal with all this stuff. And there's an overwhelming need for all of us to create connections between our customers, with the information, and amongst the global and changing workforce. So how are you going to address this? I think we can learn from the innovative social business solutions that our peers and fellow leaders are already applying, what they're doing, and more importantly, how they got started. And that's really what we're going to talk about today. As you heard yesterday, we think social business is defined by 3 core tenets. As we've worked with a wide range of clients, we've seen a pattern emerge about how businesses like these, ones that are engaged, transparent, and nimble, get started. There's entry points, so let's look at these. The first, it's about deepening client relationships. This is best related to the marketing and customer service functions within an organization. A professional in one of these areas is probably asking questions like, wouldn't it be great if my clients could interact with each other, maybe share feedback or recommend new products? Could my marketing campaigns be more effective? Could I be resolving customer issues in my call centers faster? with greater insight into the issues they face. All of these questions have a direct impact on a company's bottom line. And each can be a great project to tackle with a social business strategy. A second entry point is how to drive operational efficiency. And over the last few years, that's been a pretty big topic for all of us. And this is something that a product and service development professional could get started with. In this case, the questions are something like, how do I get new products to market faster? Are too many of our great ideas getting lost within the bureaucracy of the organization? Do I have a strategy to listen to the market so that I can keep up, or even better, get ahead? How can I do a better job supporting relationships with our top customers and partners? In these cases, you can imagine a wide range of solutions that a social business can apply, like the ability to innovate on a global scale, leveraging the collective expertise of their organization. And finally, a third point is around optimizing the workforce. And this really focuses in on the human resources function within an organization. And they're seeing questions like, how do I do more with fewer resources? That's kind of a common question. How do I get more value from an increasingly distributed workforce? As we integrate social tools, what about policy? What about governance? Is there a way to lower costs, travel, without impacting productivity? Is there a better way for our teams to collaborate, create and share projects, documents, without inundating people with new processes? Again, social businesses can provide solutions to all of these questions. No matter which of these entry points you choose, there are simple steps to get started. Over the rest of today, you'll learn more about these steps and how we make social business real within your company. You can begin to consider the possibilities. We all know that our digital reputation is more important than ever. What are consumers saying about your business? As social networking tools become pervasive, so does information about a company's brand. A recent study showed that 25% of search results for the world's top 20 brands are links to user-generated content. Think about that. Consumers now wield unprecedented power over how your brand is perceived in the marketplace. A social business embraces this idea and actually engages and becomes part of the conversation. It applies analytics to do sophisticated sentiment analysis to see what consumers are saying and allowing them to react in real time. And let's talk about security, because clearly that's a real issue here. Issues relating to the protection of intellectual property in the socially networked world, as well as potential legal risks as disclosure of information violates certain regulations. All of these things must be taken into account. From a human resources perspective, HR policies are going to have to evolve to address concurrent massive increase in public information about your employees, about candidates, and even about your alumni. You have to think differently about the whole organization historically and in the future. Imagine connecting to a talent cloud, a community of skilled employees that you can tap into when you need them in real time, accessing skills and then acquiring them. So clearly, the traditional hierarchical enterprise, built on a structure of departments and compartmentalization, will need to evolve. The multinational corporation will give way to a globally integrated, socially synergistic enterprise, built on continually evolving communities and a culture of sharing and innovation. The differentiating factors, these will separate the leaders from the masses, will stem from how effectively an organization embraces this social business culture and the technology that enables it. Effective organizations will transform themselves and take leadership roles in their industries. Now, speaking of transformation, I am very pleased to have my friend and colleague, John Iwata, with me today. He knows quite a bit about what it takes to transform a very large organization, and I'd like to invite him up here to talk about how IBM is tackling some of the same challenges I just outlined. John?
Thanks, Mike. Good morning, everybody. You know, like many IBMers, my association with Lotus and its community began in 1995 when Lotus became part of the IBM family. But of course, 1995 was significant and historic for another reason. Now, that's when the World Wide Web burst on the scene for most of us. You know, if you go back to that time, at first, it appeared that IBM and Lotus had nothing to do with the internet. We were irrelevant to this new phenomenon. That's because, as you'll recall, in those very early days, the net was about what? Browsers, network access, and this obsession over owning content, remember? And what were all these people doing online? Surfing. But then all of us took a bold step. Together we declared, starting in that very year, that the internet would be ready for business, real business. People would shift from browsing to shopping, from surfing to working. We said the internet would enable secure transactions of every type, and that in turn would change every business and institution. It seems so obvious today saying that the internet would be used for real business, but at the time it was almost laughable. In fact, people laughed. But we believed, and together we made a market, e-business. Market-making opportunities don't come along very often, but we have one now. Today we have another opportunity to lead, to make a market, and to provide our companies with game-changing capabilities. 2 years ago, in the depths of the financial crisis, IBM began a global conversation about the next era of computing and its impact on business and society. You saw that in the opening video. We identified 3 broad trends that we'd see playing out. Computing is being put into things we'd never recognize as computers. Everything is becoming instrumented with sensors, RFID tags, GPS, actuators, cameras. All of these digital devices are being interconnected. And the unprecedented amount of data, which Mike just referred to, most of it unstructured, would yield actionable insights. And with this insight, with this intelligence, we would see, often for the first time, what was actually happening in our energy grids, in the supply chains, in water systems, in our cities, and in our companies. We could make these systems and infrastructures more efficient, more responsive, more sustainable. In a word, we can make them smarter. And from the start, we saw that all the ways in which people would interact, that too would become smarter. Instrumentation in the form of smartphones and other mobile devices has put unprecedented power in the hands of people anywhere they go. Social technology, which now accounts for 22% of people's time spent online, has connected billions of people. And the emergence of social data analytics enhances not only the intelligence of individuals, but the intelligence of individuals in networks. You know, social technology did not invent social networks. People are inherently social, and I don't mean sociable, although it's nice to be sociable. I mean, we have always interacted to get things done, to work, buy, sell, learn, cure, govern, to organize to create value. Sometimes that work is very public, like in retail. And sometimes that work is necessarily private and done in a very secure way. Well, we now have the capability to make all of these forms of human interaction, B2C, B2B, intercompany, intracompany, more efficient, more responsive, borderless, smarter. You see the pattern. This is social business. This is the opportunity that we can lead together. Technology has a role, of course, but just as with e-business more than 10 years ago, the real action and the real opportunity is in how social business will transform the enterprise itself. Let me give you a few examples. Social business can change the way we create for an organization, create value. At IBM, application development for our own internal usage is one of our largest investments. Recently, we've created a new model within the CIO organization called Generation Open. This is essentially a global virtual community that leverages collaborative practices to develop software. Some 8,000 IBM developers are invited to select and work on software projects of their own choosing. Successful delivery earns points toward the developer's reputation. It provides continuous feedback. It allows us to recognize performance. This is highly motivating for the development community. It's a chance for them to enhance their skills and their professional eminence. And for IBM, last year, that community delivered over 160,000 projects. We have reduced cycle time for application delivery by 30%, driven down cost by a third, and increased reuse of component assets by 4x. We're encouraged. We think this is a strong, tangible proof point of the power of social business to create business outcomes. Social business also introduces new methods for employee engagement. Certainly, inside our companies, there's tremendous opportunity to support collaboration and expertise sharing, and a lot of us are doing this. Things become a little trickier, but far more interesting when you go outside the firewall. We may begin with designating certain employees or teams to blog or tweet or to monitor social sites, for example, to provide customer service and to support sales and marketing efforts. But realistically and inevitably, all of our employees will adopt social technologies if they haven't already. The question is, how can we help them become experts at using social media strategically and responsibly? We think this is where the game is headed. Again, go back to the 90s. What happened in the late 1990s once mainstream business embraced the internet? We all flooded the net with content, hoping that people would find information about us and our products and services, and we still do that today. Now, as social business takes hold, we can expect companies to flood the net with their people, with their experts, hoping that they will be found. And when that happens, the competitive differentiation will be not simply having your people engaging in social business, but being good at it, being expert at it. We've begun this journey at IBM. We recently launched an initiative called Social Business at IBM, very, very clever name. The goal is to enhance the social business acumen of all IBMers, more than 400,000 IBMers. It educates them on our social business policies and guidelines, but it does more than that. There are tools to enable both internal and external social interactions directly from inside the firewall, a personal dashboard that lets them monitor all their personal and professional networks, and there's tagging help and tools so that whatever they publish or broadcast can be found strategically. And this is a great time and a great year to deploy this tool because, as you heard yesterday, it's IBM Centennial. So throughout this year, all of us will be engaging in a dialogue with the market about our history of innovation, but more importantly, the future of the enterprise, which will be inherently social in our opinion. So we are deliberately enabling all IBMers to lead this conversation through social business. We aim to exit this year having helped 50,000 IBMers at a minimum in all fields become experts in using social business strategically and responsibly. Finally, this type of change within any business has implications for management systems and leadership. Let me suggest one. Traditionally, a company organizes around functional areas and audiences. This makes sense, it's very logical. Sales and marketing focuses on the customer. HR focuses on employees and new hires and retirees. Investor relations focuses on the shareholder, and so on and so on. But with today's transparency and immediacy, we are being driven to be much more aligned and coordinated. Here's another way of thinking about it. You know, we all understand the need to have a single view of the customer. Well, in a sense, embracing social business will drive us to present a single view of our own companies to everyone. And so whether people engage with us through our advertising or events or face-to-face or increasingly through online interactions with any member of our companies, we want them to have a consistent, authentic experience. That's hard. So Those of you who are advocates and champions of social business in your companies will probably find yourselves being an integrating force within your companies as well. And that's a great leadership role to have. I hope I've given you an idea of how social business can truly transform an organization, but also what will be required to unlock its real value. Social business means more than just deploying another collaboration tool or giving your employees access to Facebook or Twitter or posting videos on YouTube. We're talking about enhancing the way that people interact to create value and making that smarter. To do this, we believe social business has to include these three elements. Secure, scalable technology, of course, coupled with proven business cases that produce tangible outcomes. This is what will be expected. And responsible management approaches, including education for all of our employees and a progressive policy. I'm very excited about how we at IBM will continue to implement our own social business strategy, as well as how we can help a growing number of our clients do the same, as you'll hear in a moment during the panel. See, all of us have an opportunity to be leaders in this space. The time has come again for that, to transform our companies, to make a market. The time to act is now, and the way to act is together. Thank you very much.
John, can you stay up here with me for a few minutes? We're going to bring a panel out. So I'd like to bring up two leaders of companies that are benefiting from social business. At this time, I'm pleased to introduce those leaders. First is Roberto Garcia, the Innovation Director for Cemex. Cemex is a global building materials company, and in 2010, they launched Shift, a social media-based platform based on Lotus Connections. Shift was initially designed to engage the company in discussion, debate, and action on 9 key strategic initiatives. But a viral campaign inspired incredible participation. From a few hundred members in 9 communities, in less than 1 year, this platform has now reached over 20,000 active users, 90% of their office personnel, and over 500 communities. Please welcome Roberto Garcia. Our other panelist today is Greg Welch, the VP of Corporate Branding and Creative for State Street Bank. State Street is a leading financial services provider, and Greg is charged with all aspects of brand management, including core messaging, development, brand identity, and communications. State Street recently completed a successful brand alignment area with 3 new portal implementations, all in 1 year, and incorporating social technologies, starting with their intranet. Please welcome Greg Welch. All right, gentlemen, let's get started. Roberto, I'm sure you're learning a lot from your transition to social business, certainly from your success and perhaps even from making some mistakes along the way. Could you share a few secrets with that?
I think there is not too many secrets to share, but it depends on the company. I think every company has its own culture. I think the biggest secret for us was to really get in synchrony with the current culture, because at the end, what we were trying to achieve is to reshape a little bit the culture of the company. And we get in synchrony with that, and for us was key. And then another example is you need to understand the market segmentation internally too. You have champions, you have people that could be blockers. So you need really to understand your internal network.
Okay. Greg, as you look at your role at State Street, what are the benefits you're seeking from social business? And how do you think about where to start?
Well, there was sort of a confluence of need happening at State Street. So multiple work streams were looking at social media at the same time. Marketing was one of them. The financial crisis put State Street in a category that we weren't in before. State Street kind of played below the radar as an institutional, provider of institutional services. We weren't Tart Bank. We were thrown into the public eye. And we realized that there was a growing liability in not managing our brand more aggressively, especially in social media vehicles. From a marketing perspective, you had mentioned that we went through a brand alignment program, which was really about just presenting our core businesses in a way that was more understandable for our clients and for our employees. We looked at social media as a way of conveying that message more effectively and engaging our clients. And on the employee side, we were looking to build engagement through social media and also using social media as an education tool. Our GHR, our Global Human Resources Group, was looking at collaboration tools simultaneously as a mechanism to foster a growing flex workforce, so the ability to work from anywhere, pretty much. And our Global Product Management team was looking at not only how do we engage our clients better, but how do we foster innovation internally? So discussions of new product ideas and ensuring that the best product ideas bubble up to the surface quickly and effectively. I think at the end of the day, though, we were looking for a lot of what you highlighted in the intro, which is not only sort of effective, proactive brand management, but also making a very complex organization easier to access. So State Street is 27,000 people. We're in 27 markets, have multiple, in each one of those markets, our product and service mix is different, the regulatory environment is different. It's hard for both clients and employees to access that. We wanted to make the universe a little smaller. We wanted access to be immediate. And we wanted to benefit from the collective. We have a very experienced workforce that we want to hear from more actively.
All right, so it ties back to John's last point here about not only do you have a single view of your clients, you want to have the clients have a single view of the bank, right? A single view of the brand image. And in fact, I think as you think about that, the employees become an attribute of your brand, right? It's kind of a changing phenomena about these social networks. John, as you think about work at IBM and your role as the head of marketing there, how has your work changed as a result of this?
Well, I start with some of the, call them orthodoxies that underpin how marketing is practiced in the field. You go way back, and we're all trained on the marketing funnel, for example, and the idea that you have to raise awareness and then drive consideration, preference, and finally action. And we all understand that. And there are implications of social business to the funnel. And at IBM, 43% now of our marketing investments are in digital, but within digital, which has been going up now for years, within digital, we're beginning to see a split between digital for, call it Web 1.0, banner ads, paid search, and the like, and now social business. And I would guess that will increase over time. But the other aspect of this is who could afford historically to have a funnel? It would be corporations and governments, right? Because you had to have the means to reach populations at scale. But the advent of everything we've been talking about has put in the hands of billions of people the equivalent of a printing press and a broadcast studio. And so in addition to changing our funnel, so to speak, we have to think strategically about all of our employees and all of our clients and all of our, the ecosystem having funnels themselves, exerting influence favorably or not. And we're getting our heads wrapped around that. How do we make that intentional versus just a happy consequence of happy employees and happy clients?
Okay. Gilberto, the transformation of social business can be a pretty big undertaking. We talked about the viral approach. As I think about Cemex and the business you're in, it's not the first business I would have thought of running to social media so quickly and social business so fast. How did you think about the business case? Where was the return for Cemex in putting this in place?
Yes. The overall idea was to improve the levels of innovation in the whole company. But we recognize that we need to do first something very important, which is create a platform for collaboration. Connect all those individuals that were dispersed globally, all this talent that is in different time zones, different languages, different culture. So for us, the first goal was to create an ecosystem for collaboration that will be very easy with a purpose, because we declared initially that the purpose was to incentivize innovation in different areas. And the business case was quite simple. It was simple by replication of operational efficiencies. We have a lot of plants all over the globe, and still there is opportunities. We found those opportunities. We monetize and clarify where is the value. just by making simple replication of best practices. The second step on the business case was looking for radical innovations. And radical innovations leads to new market needs, new solutions, new business lines even for the company. So the business case was built on those two steps.
So it was really about unlocking the collective wisdom of the distributed organization and finding innovation in the markets that you're extending into, right, as you go around.
It was creating a market for opportunities and ideas for innovation. That was the overall idea.
Stakeholder management is one of the things we've talked about over the last couple of days and dealing with, how do you get started in this space? Greg, in your business, how did you start to convince the skeptical stakeholders that you needed to go through this process that you're in flight with now?
Well, I mentioned the multiple work streams that were happening, all of which had very solid business cases. One thing that was important that we did was come together to kind of unify the case for social media. So we didn't have skeptics per se, but we did have some work to do with conveying what our vision was and providing mechanisms for people to understand that and also address some key concerns that were happening. So in terms of vision, we looked at interactive design a little bit differently in terms of its presentation. We had just gone through a relaunch of our corporate intranet site in partnership with IBM. So it provided the perfect vehicle for delivering social media. For the first time, we had all employees going to the same place for information. So we took the interface design and branding for that first iteration of our intranet and then showed what it could look like as social media was folded in. And really, it was a lot of eye candy, but people really relate to seeing how things manifest. And then explaining how the functions work became a lot easier. We also, from the concern perspective, at least had to articulate an approach to strategy for governance. There were a lot of questions and a lot of concerns about having a governance model, and we're still frankly looking at what the ongoing body will be and where it will sit inside the organization that will manage social media ongoing. And that's everything from policing to fostering and nurturing conversation and also evolving the tool.
So John, given IBM is an innovation company by design, and we've had so many people engaged in social media and the internet from very early days, I'm sure when you brought the ideas forward on really extending this, it was met with a welcoming reception by senior management.
You know better, Mike. I mean, you know better. No, I'm still kind of recovering from that. Starting in the late '90s, we embraced the internet, right? And we started inside the firewall, and like Gilberto and Greg mentioned, we got a lot of benefit from aiding collaboration among employees and surfacing ideas. And then when social networking came along, we were among the first companies to have a blogging guideline that actually encouraged IBMers to blog responsibly. Then Second Life came along, and then Twitter and so forth, and we were evolving forward and never really regretting this embracing of new tools and methods. This deceived me into thinking that my senior colleagues would be fully supportive of the next step, which was to deliberately enable the entire workforce to go through the firewall and engage in social business. So I brought this into the executive committee about a year ago with this proposal, and I think after 2 or 3 minutes, I don't know who fired the first shot, but it was the general counsel said, you're giving away trade secrets and confidential information. The CFO said, disclosure, Reg FD, going to jail. The head of HR said, you're going to make it easy for our competitors to identify top talent and recruit people away from us. The CEO said, whatever you're talking about, we're not ready for this. And that was a real eye-opening moment, because it was clear that as a team, we hadn't really deliberately engaged in a thoughtful strategic discussion about what is this. And the two questions that, of course, I think every client, every company is asking themselves at senior levels is, what is the real business value here? And how do we mitigate the risks? How do we embrace a responsible management system so that we get the benefit without putting the company at risk? I'm happy to report, since then, we have had those discussions to the point where we're able to encourage, IBMers at scale to get good at this.
Good. That's great. Greg, in your answer a few minutes ago, you said something that actually appeals a lot to this audience, which is that the way you sold this is that you use demos, right? Demos tend to sell technology, right? It's letting people touch and feel what's going on. But you're in a very different industry. You have to deal with a set of problems that many companies don't, right? The regulatory environment around the financial industry was tough, but over the last couple of years has become intense, I think is a better way to look at it. So many banks would be pretty scared about how this is going to play out. How do you deal with the regulatory issues, and how do you really come to the conclusion around business value outweighs business risk, right?
Well, I think it's safe to say that State Street was scared. We weren't unusual in that regard. In essence, though, the issues that we were facing with social media, of course, it's not all aspects of regulation in the banking industry. It's really around strict rules that govern information dissemination and information sharing. And then also we have data privacy issues that are especially robust in certain markets. The fundamental rules in that regard haven't really changed. It's that social media presents an opportunity for the exposure to be just exponentially greater. And that's where a lot of the nervousness was happening internally, because in essence, it was sort of fear of the unknown. And the conversation shut down very quickly when we got to, oh my God, here's this huge universe of people that can see something that they maybe shouldn't see, and then we're hugely exposed. So we had to first kind of take a step back. Our legal and compliance teams have been very much involved in the conversations, but to say, hey, we're not dealing with a different universe here. We have to switch, or we're dealing with a somewhat different universe, but the same fundamental issues we've always had. We have to switch risk avoidance to risk management and risk mitigation. So it became, how do we use this tool in a way that is we can be as responsible as possible to our multiple stakeholders, including regulatory bodies. And some of that were really simple conversations. For example, we have certain populations in State Street that really, really can't talk to each other. So we have trading desks in multiple businesses that shouldn't be exchanging notes. We've talked about partitioning those groups of people so that they may not enjoy full access to this tool. We have a social media policy that has expanded as part of this process, and all employees will be required to certify that. Right now it's yearly, likely that will increase in frequency, and that is posted in a very obvious place, or will be on our system. From a data privacy perspective, certain markets in Europe really require that this not be mandatory and that there be no pressure on employees to share personal information. So the entire system is opt-in, and then once you get into the system, all that you share about yourself is entirely optional. So your profile can have as little or as much as you want. So, I mean, there are simple examples of obviously a very complex issue, but I think once you're able to sort of educate the multiple stakeholders at what the variables are, then a reasonable conversation could ensue.
I think one of the interesting things I picked up from that answer was that during the development and design phase of what you were trying to do, the stakeholders were at the table, right? Typically when I've done projects, usually the chief legal counsel is not part of the design committee, right? Or the head of regulatory requirements for the company is not part of designing your new website. It's a different model. I think that ties back, John, to your story about what was missing from that initial conversation might have been engagement, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the fault was, my own here, that we hadn't done that. We hadn't reached out to do this together. And the evolution since then, I mean, the CFO, the general counsel, HR, the CIO, is fully supportive now of doing it in a responsible way. I just want to share with you a quote from the CFO. The first meeting where he raised these objections, and they were legitimate, and they are legitimate, 6 or 9 months later, he made a comment about business embracing social media, social business. He was asked a question, well, what worries you as a CFO about social media? And he said, I think, in so many words, worry is not a word that's appropriate in business. We are paid to measure risk and to manage risk. And social media is one of those opportunities like emerging markets. Or is there a risk to doing business in some of the emerging markets of the world today? Yes. Does that mean we shouldn't go there? No. Social media is one of those emerging opportunities. We just have to figure it out.
Emerging markets is an interesting discussion here, right? Because part of what social media does is it starts to collect the intelligence, the intellectual capital of the talent that's in the organization from wherever it resides today and starts to make it, horizontally accessible across the whole organization, right? As we all kind of continue to expand, I think all of our companies are doing this, expanding into the emerging markets around the world. It's access to that information and that talent in a way that helps move business forward and accelerate progress in those spaces that becomes important. CEMEX has been expanding around multiple parts of the world, and I think that's what you said a few minutes ago about expanding the innovation paradigm on a global scale. But you went through pretty explosive growth in how this was virally adopted. When you saw this take off a little bit faster than expected, how did you react? And were there issues you had to deal with the stakeholders or with the business, or did you just let it fly and just accelerate as fast as you could?
For us, it was very important to get the critical mass of adoption. And the critical mass of adoption was one stream. The other one was to really communicate what is the purpose of this, what the company wants to achieve. Top management were involved. We are very fortunate to have our chairman, who is very advocate of social media. He uses Twitter every day. But you need to engage the top management on this. We were very surprised with the quick adoption, and this was natural. I think everybody has fertile lands where the opportunities are there, where they do really need to collaborate, where the opportunities and challenges are needed. So we achieved first those small communities before going viral. And yes, it was really a surprise for us, this fast adoption. But then you need to communicate the value. After achieving the critical mass, you need to demonstrate what is the value of this adoption. This is not for fun. This is for business. This is to improve operational efficiencies. This is to tackle new markets. This is to create new products, to create new brands. And communication and marketing is very important too.
All right, I'd like to ask you to join me in thanking the panel. Great discussion, some of the challenges I think we're all seeing. John, Roberto, and Greg, thank you for your time today. Thank you for joining me up on stage. And more importantly, thank you for joining all of us in the room for this very important conversation. Thank you. In closing, have a seat. Sit down. In closing, let me leave you with a couple thoughts. I think we can all agree that the prospect of becoming a social business represents a terrific opportunity to dramatically improve key functions like marketing, product and service development, human resources, and operations. And over the next few days, we'll highlight more areas for you to consider. As you go through the rest of the conference, seek out those sessions. Learn from the companies that are already achieving business value from their social business transformation. And tomorrow, back in this room, another general session will give you a chance to look out into the future, where things are going. Andrew McAfee will be here. For those of you who don't know, he originally coined the term Enterprise 2.0. Truly a visionary in this space, looking forward to where the market's going. You'll hear from IBM thought leaders like Irene Greif, IBM Fellow and head of the IBM Center for Social Software, who's going to talk about some of the futuristic things that we're working on to help move this forward as we go. Charlie Hill, our CTO from Lotus, will be on stage to talk about what's going on and how Lotus is going to take advantage of all of these capabilities and help move us all forward. So the time to begin is now. Let's get social and let's do business. Thank you. Thank you, guys.